Nobody humiliates you louder than someone who used to love you, and nobody saves you quieter than someone you were never supposed to meet. The night Uncle Emeka sold Amara's future to settle a debt she never agreed to, she didn't cry. She packed one bag. She told herself, "I have survived worse." She had no idea what she was walking into. She had no idea that the man waiting for her at the end of that red dirt road had been watching the world move for years from a distance and had chosen, very deliberately, to stay invisible. Until now. Amara Osei was 26 years old, and she had already rebuilt her life twice. Once when her parents died in a bus accident on the Benin-Ore Expressway. Once when the scholarship she'd earned, the one she'd worked 4 years to qualify for, was quietly redirected, not stolen by a stranger, by her cousin Chisom. They had grown up in the same compound, shared the same aunties, eaten from the same pot every Sunday, and Chisom had taken the recommendation letter from Uncle Emeka's desk, rewritten the name at the top, and walked into a new life that was supposed to be Amara's. Nobody caught it for 2 years. When they did, Chisom wept. Uncle Emeka called it a misunderstanding. Amara went back to selling fabric in the Tejuosh market with a degree she'd paid for herself, in a future that looked like it had been returned unopened. She did not fall apart. That was the thing about Amara that people consistently underestimated. She kept moving, quietly, precisely, the way people move when they have learned that noise doesn't save you, only momentum does. She was restocking bolts of Ankara on a Tuesday morning when Uncle Emeka appeared at the market stall. He was wearing his church clothes. That was the first sign. Uncle Emeka only wore his church clothes when he needed God on his side before saying something he already knew was wrong. "Amara," he said, "I need to speak with you." He took her to a roadside buka and ordered food she hadn't asked for and talked about her parents and how proud they would have been. And Amara sat there and watched him eat and thought, he is rehearsing. He always rehearsed when it was bad. He finally said it between bites of egusi soup. "There is a man," he said, "a farmer. His family has land outside Ibadan. Old family, good family, quiet people." "You were owed a debt," Amara said. "From him?" "Not from him," Uncle Emeka said carefully. "From me." The debt was 4 years old, a business arrangement gone wrong, an amount that had compounded, and this man, this farmer, had agreed to absorb the debt entirely in exchange for one thing. He wanted a wife. Not just any wife. He had, Uncle Emeka said with the tone of someone reading from a document he didn't write, specifically asked for Amara. She didn't move. "He doesn't know me," she said. "He knows of you," Uncle Emeka said. "What does that mean?" Her uncle looked away. He didn't answer. And that specific silence was the second sign. Chisom found out by that evening. She came to Amara's room the way she had always entered rooms, like she owned the air in them. She sat on the edge of the bed. She said, "I heard." Amara was folding clothes. She didn't stop. "Ibadan," Chisom said. "A farmer. You know what that means. That is not a life, Amara. That is a sentence." "Did you come to help?" Amara asked. "Or did you come to watch?" Chisom's face did something complicated, because the answer, if she was being honest, was the second one. She had come to confirm that this was happening to Amara and not to her. She had come to measure the distance between their lives and find herself still ahead. "You took my scholarship," Amara said, not loudly, not accusatory, just fact. Chisom went still. "You took it. Rewrote my name, lived my life for 2 years, and when they found out, you cried, and the family called it a misunderstanding." She set down the clothes. "Today, Uncle Emeka is sending me to Ibadan to settle a debt that is not mine, and you came here to make sure I don't find a way out of it." Chisam's chin lifted. "That is not—" "Go," Amara said. Chisam opened her mouth. Amara looked at her. She went. She left on a Friday. Uncle Emeka hired a car. It drove for 3 hours, then turned off the main road onto a track of red laterite earth that wound through farmland and forest until it reached a gate. Not a gate Amara expected, not a rusted metal thing on a concrete post. A gate made of wrought iron and hardwood, the kind that required someone to open it from the inside. Someone did. The driveway beyond was lined with mango trees so old they formed a canopy. The house at the end was not large in the way that announces itself. It was large the way things are large when they have been standing for a long time and have never needed to explain themselves. Stone and timber, wide veranda, bougainvillea climbing the east wall in colors she didn't have names for. The car stopped. Amara looked at the house. Then she got out. She was not going to let a house, even this house, make her feel something before she decided to. Would you have gotten out of that car or told the driver to turn back? Comment below.
The woman who met her at the door was perhaps 70, or perhaps older, the kind of old that had stopped apologizing for itself. She looked at Amara like a doctor looks at an X-ray, directly, without sentimentality, finding the truth of the thing. "My name is Nkechi," she said. "This is my home. Tobias is my grandson." She stepped aside. "Come in, you haven't eaten." It was not a question. Inside, the house did not perform its wealth. There were bookshelves built into the walls like they had grown there, a kitchen that smelled of groundnut soup and wood smoke, a crossword puzzle left open on a side table. Someone lived here, really lived. This was not a stage set. Grandma Nkechi placed food in front of her. Then she said, "I know what they told you, that we are simple people, that this is farmland, that you are here because a debt needed settling." "Yes." "Some of that is true," Grandma Nkechi said. "The farm is real. The debt is real." A pause. "The rest is context." Amara set down her spoon. "What does that mean?" Grandma Nkechi smiled, the way people smile when they know more than they will say tonight. "Ask Tobias." She heard him before she saw him. Not footsteps, a voice coming from outside through the open window, speaking Yoruba rapidly into a phone, and then a pause, switching to English without losing momentum. "Tell the Hong Kong office to hold the container manifest until I've reviewed it personally. Don't release it through a papa. I don't care what the timeline says." The call ended. Silence. Then footsteps. The man who came through the back door was in work trousers and a faded shirt. There was red earth on his boots. A thin line of exhaustion at the corners of his eyes that said he had been awake since before reasonable hours. He was mid-30s, lean in the way of someone whose stillness was trained rather than natural. He had a face that was, and Amara noted this with the precise neutrality of someone who had learned not to trust first impressions, quietly, almost aggressively composed. Not performing composure, actually composed. The kind that had foundations. He looked at her. Something behind his eyes, brief, involuntary, shifted, like a door that opened before someone decided to open it. "You're Amara," he said. "Yes." He crossed the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of cold water, placed one in front of her without asking. "I'm Tobias. I'm sorry for the circumstances that brought you here." No performance in it, just the fact and the acknowledgement of it. She looked at him. "Hong Kong office," she said. He looked back at her. "For a dry goods merchant, you have an interesting Friday afternoon." Something moved in his face, not quite a smile, the ancestor of one. "The farm is real," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm asking about the other thing." He sat down across from her. "The other thing," he said slowly, "is a longer conversation." Amara had one bag on a guest room floor. She had nothing to lose by asking the right questions. She folded her hands. "How long is the conversation?" He didn't answer that night. He said, "Rest first, then we talk." She lay in the guest room on a bed that was better than anything she'd slept on in 3 years. The fan ceiling turned slowly. The Ibadan night made its sounds, insects, a distant generator. She thought about the voice through the window. Hong Kong office, container manifest, a papa. She thought about the wrought-iron gate, the mango trees, Grandma Nkechi's word, context. She didn't sleep for a long time. In the morning, Grandma Nkechi was in the kitchen before her. Coffee was already poured. "Tobias had left before dawn," Grandma Nkechi said. "He does that." "Where does he go?" She turned a page of the crossword. "Everywhere." Amara said, "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I don't always answer, but you can always ask." "Why Tobias? He is whatever he is. He could have anyone." Grandma Nkechi looked up then, really looked. "He has been surrounded his entire life by people who saw him as a resource, something to access, something to use." She paused. "Your uncle's debt was real, but Tobias didn't have to agree to this arrangement. Several people offered other solutions." Amara looked at her. "He agreed because the name they brought him was yours," Grandma Nkechi said. "He agreed before asking a single other question." "Why?" Grandma Nkechi returned to the crossword. "Ask him. When he comes back, ask him directly. He will tell you the truth." She paused. "He always tells the truth. It is sometimes inconvenient, but it is always the truth." She found the library, a room off the main corridor, by following the smell of old paper. She pulled a book off the shelf almost at random. Inside, on the title page, a handwritten note in Yoruba she couldn't fully read. When she turned to find him in the doorway, she held up the book. "What does this say?" He came in and sat across from her, not beside her, across from her, which she appreciated for reasons she couldn't articulate. "It says, the truth doesn't always arrive at the right time, but it always arrives." "Who wrote it?" "My grandfather, to my grandmother, before she agreed to marry him." "He didn't know her when he wrote it?" "No," he said. "It was part of his proposal. He gave her a book and told her what was true, that he would not be easy to live beside, but that he would never make her smaller." The room was very quiet. Amara set the book on her knee. She said, "What are you, exactly? Not the farm, not the container manifests. What are you?" "I run things," he said. "What things?" "Infrastructure," he said, "the kind that is not visible. Agricultural supply chains from West Africa into Southeast Asia, cold chain logistics for medical supplies across 7 countries, a private equity fund that restructures distressed businesses in markets institutional investors avoid." He paused. "And yes, some things that are more difficult to explain in this lighting." "Difficult," she said, "or illegal?" "Completed," he said, "is the accurate word." "Are you dangerous?" she asked. "To the people who have given me reason to be," he said, "yes." "Not to me." "Not to you," he said, without hesitation. "That is not a complete answer." "No," he agreed, "it's not, but it's the honest one." He placed a bank card on the table in front of her. "For anything you need," he said, "you don't have to ask." She looked at the card. "I haven't asked for anything yet." "You will," Grandma Nkechi said from across the kitchen. "You're in a new place. There must be things." Amara hesitated. Then, mostly because the whole evening was already operating outside anything she'd planned for, she checked the account balance connected to the card. She had to count the digits twice. She lowered her phone slowly.
"Who are you?" she said. Not accusatory, just the actual question, the one she should have asked at the front door. Mama Sue set her tea down. "He is my grandson," she said, "and he is very good at being ordinary when he chooses to be." Tobias said nothing. He just looked at Amara with that particular calm, the kind with foundations too deep to be rattled by the surface. And Amara, for the first time in years, had absolutely no idea what she had walked into. 4 days in, he said, "Come with me." "Where?" she asked. "The farm, the real one." The Jeep was old, deliberately old. Tobias drove himself. No driver, no security, just him and Amara, and a dirt road that opened into something she hadn't expected. Flat and straight to the horizon, cassava fields, maize in lines, and in the distance, a processing unit, industrial-sized, where workers moved in and out on the morning shift. "This is all yours?" she asked. "Some," he said. "The rest is cooperative, neighboring families." He stopped the Jeep. They both got out. The air smelled of moist earth and something sweet, ripening crops. "My grandfather," Tobias said without being asked, "came to this land with 1 borrowed tool and 1 borrowed seed." He paused. He looked at his hands. He said, "Anything can be taken away, anything. But land comes back, if you're decent to it." Amara looked at him. "You miss him," she said. "Every day," he said, directly, without hesitation. Then Tobias did something she didn't expect. He crouched down beside a cassava plant, put his hands in the soil, felt it properly, the way a doctor uses a stethoscope. "Ready next week," he said. "This section needs harvesting." He stood, cleaned his hands. No performance in it, just a man on his land. Hong Kong manifests, black cars, phone calls in 3 languages, and then this. Amara thought, "I don't know who you are." Then she thought, "I want to learn."
Amara had planned to maintain distance, a routine, a schedule, a way to stay inside this house without becoming furniture. That plan lasted 4 days. On the 5th day, she noticed the cold storage temperature log at the processing unit was outdated. She told Tobias at dinner. He looked up from his food. "Why are you paying attention to this?" he asked. "Because I'm here," she said, "and things here matter to me now." He wrote something down. "Talk to the operations manager. Tell him I approve the upgrade." "I'll handle it myself," she said. He looked at her. Something in his shoulders, something that had been tight for a long time, released slightly. Like a weight someone had finally offered to carry with him. She was 17 days into her new life when the cars arrived. Not SUVs, ordinary-looking Toyotas that moved with synchronized precision, the kind that communicated rehearsed purpose. Grandma Nkechi set down her knife. She looked at Amara. "Go to the upstairs sitting room," she said. "Stay away from the windows." Amara went. She didn't go to the sitting room. She stood at the top of the stairs in the dark and listened. Voices downstairs. Yoruba, rapid and low. English, accented, controlled. Then Tobias. His voice was quieter than all of them, and somehow the most present thing in the room, without raising itself even slightly. She counted. 14 minutes. Then the front door closed. The cars left. She came downstairs. Tobias was in the kitchen with a glass of water. He looked up. "You didn't stay upstairs," he said. "No." He studied her face. "Are you frightened?" Amara considered the question honestly. "No," she said. He looked at her. "You should ask what you want to ask." She folded her arms. "Are those men connected to the complicated parts?" "Yes." "Is anyone hurt?" "Not tonight," he said. "That should have been a wall. It wasn't. It landed the way facts land when the person delivering them trusts you enough to tell them plainly." "I need to understand the rules," she said.
of this life, what it requires. He was quiet. Because I came here through a door I didn't choose, but I am deciding right now to walk deeper into it. And if I walk deeper, I need to know what I'm walking inside. Tobias looked at her. Something in his face opened. No performance, no strategy, just recognition. Like a man seeing something he had looked for in many places and found, finally, here. He said very quietly, "No one has ever said it that way to me." She waited. "Like a choice," he said. "Everyone else was already decided by money or fear or what they wanted from me. You were the first person to stand in this house and say, 'I am choosing.'" He looked at his hands. "The rules," he said, "are these. She would never be asked to participate in anything she hadn't agreed to. She would be protected at a level invisible to her, unless it needed to become visible. There would be things she would see and not ask about. Evenings when he came home carrying something behind his eyes that needed a quiet room, she would give him the room. In exchange, everything else, entirely, without condition. This house is yours," he said. "My grandmother is your family. My time, what I can give of it, I give to you first."
There is a version of this story where the arrangement is the beginning. It is not the beginning. The beginning is 3 years earlier. Abuja, a hospital corridor at 2 a.m. Amara had been in Abuja for a job interview that hadn't worked out. She was walking through the hospital corridor as a shortcut. The hospital was between the bus station and her hotel. And she saw a man sitting on a plastic chair in the hallway. Not waiting for anything, or at least not anything good. Just sitting, with the particular stillness of someone who had used up all their forward motion. She had stopped. She hadn't planned to. She'd said in Yoruba because his face was a certain kind of face that speaks that language first. "You look like someone who is trying to decide something difficult." He hadn't answered. She sat in the empty chair beside him, not touching, not speaking. For maybe 8 minutes, she just sat. Then she had to go. She had said on her way out, "Whatever you are deciding, decide it in the morning, not tonight. Things look different in the morning." She had a bus to catch. She did not look back. In the library, Tobias looked at her. "Do you remember," he said, 3 years ago, Abuja, a hospital corridor at 2 a.m.? Amara went still. "My father had just died," he said. "The business, what it actually was, had just transferred to me. I was sitting in that corridor because I had made a decision in my office that I couldn't unmake, and I wasn't sure I was still a person who could make decisions like that and go on being himself," she finished. He looked at her. "Yes. You came," he said, "from nowhere, sat down, said the thing that needed saying, and then left." Amara looked at him. "You looked me up after." "I found out your name," he said. "I kept it." She held very still. "In your world," he said quietly, 8 minutes of someone sitting beside you for no reason, wanting nothing, is not a small thing." He looked at her. "It is the largest thing. If someone had quietly kept your smallest kindness for years, would you call that fate or something better? Tell us below." Chisam called 4 weeks in. Her voice had the careful quality of someone who had been sitting with a question and needed to confirm an answer. She arrived the following Saturday, in a hire car, with the practiced casualness of someone pretending not to look at things while looking at everything. She stepped out, looked at the gate, the mango tree driveway, the house. Her face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. She controlled all of them. She looked at Amara. "It's nice," she said. "Nice," Amara almost smiled. Inside, Chisom moved through the sitting room, touching surfaces, feeling for weight, for material, pricing things without price tags. "You've settled in well," she said. "I have." "Tobias isn't here?" "A meeting," Amara said. Grandma Ketsi came in with tea and sat in the chair near the window with her crossword, which meant she was staying in the room, which Amara was grateful for. "We all thought," she said, then stopped herself. "We all thought what?" Amara asked. "We thought the adjustment would be harder for you." "Did you?" Amara said. "The dry goods business must be doing well," Chisom said, looking at the art when she said it, and there was nothing light about what her eyes were doing. "Very well," Amara said. Then, in the hallway, away from Grandma Ketchi, Chisom stopped. "Are you actually happy?" she asked. Amara looked at her. "Why?" "Because," she said. She stopped, looked at the wall. "Because I need to know." "Why do you need to know?" Chisom was quiet. In that moment she looked exactly like someone who had chosen pride so many times that it had become a condition, something that hurt now that she didn't know how to stop. "I needed you to not be happy for a little while. I needed the balance." "The balance?" Amara said. "You needed me to be losing so you could call this winning." Chisom's chin lifted, old reflex. "So are you happy?" Amara considered the question, thought about the library, the farm, the 8 minutes he had held for 3 years. "I think," she said carefully, "that I am becoming something I didn't have a word for before." Chisom searched her face, found nothing that looked like performance. Something that might have been grief moved across her features for just a second. "Good," she said, like it cost something. Uncle Emeka came to visit in his church clothes. Of course he did. He came into the house with the movement of a man who had assembled an apology and was second-guessing the architecture of it. Grandma Ketchi gave him tea. He sat in the sitting room. He looked at the room. He looked at Amara. And then Tobias walked in. Uncle Emeka looked at him, and something happened in his face that Amara had never seen from him. He recognized something. Not the house, not the art, not the property's weight. He recognized the man. He looked between Tobias and Amara with the expression of someone doing a calculation that keeps arriving at a number that doesn't make sense. "You are," he said to Tobias. He stopped. "You are—" Tobias looked at him steadily. Uncle Emeka sat back down. He was quiet for a long moment. "I thought I was settling a debt," he said slowly. "You were," Amara said. He looked at his hands. "I sent you here to pay what I owed. I told myself it was a fair arrangement. I told myself it was not as bad as it looked." "Was it?" Amara asked. He looked at her. "No," he said. "It was exactly as bad as it looked." She held his eyes. He looked old suddenly, the way people look when they stop performing a version of themselves. "I failed you," he said, "the way I failed your parents when they trusted you with me." Amara said nothing. She let the words sit. She let him sit inside them. Then she said, "I know." Not forgiveness, not closure, but "I know," which was its own kind of mercy. She was in the library when Tobias appeared in the doorway with an expression she hadn't seen before. "There is something you need to know," he said. He came in, sat across from her, and told her plainly. A competitor, a man who operated in the same infrastructure circles, had sent someone to Lagos to find Amara, to use her as leverage. "They thought," Tobias said, "that you were a soft target, that you didn't know what I was." "Were they wrong?" asked Amara. "The man they sent did not complete his journey." "Is he—" "He is not dead," Tobias said. "He is simply no longer employed in this field." "And the man who sent him?" "That is being handled." Over 3 weeks, quietly, without fanfare, 4 of the man's routes were rerouted.
3 institutional investors received documentation that recontextualized their relationship. 2 contracts were transferred to competing firms. He was not destroyed. He was simply reduced to the size that matched what he actually was without his borrowed infrastructure. Tobias told her, because she had asked him to. The people whose routes were rerouted, she said, the smaller operators. Are they okay? He looked at her. Yes, he said. That was a condition. She nodded. Okay, she said. Just okay? You protected me, she said. You told me, and you made sure the people on the edges didn't get hurt. She paused. That is everything I asked for. 2 months after the ceremony, a journalist published a feature, not about Tobias directly, but about the agricultural supply chain infrastructure that had quietly restructured cold chain logistics for medical supplies across West Africa and into 3 Southeast Asian markets. 50,000 jobs created across the supply chain, hospitals in 4 countries with access to reliable cold storage for the first time, rural clinics that had been losing vaccine supplies every rainy season, no longer. Amara read the article, then read it again. She found Tobias in his office, put the article on his desk. This is you, she said. In part. In part, she said. 50,000 jobs, clinics that now have cold storage. Some of the infrastructure was built on money that came from channels that are not clean, he said. She waited. But the infrastructure itself is clean. What it does is clean. I decided a long time ago that this was the direction it would move in. She was quiet for a long time. You are using a difficult machine to build something good. He held her eyes. That is the most honest summary anyone has given it. She walked around the desk, sat in the empty chair beside him, not touching, not speaking, just there. He looked at her. 8 minutes, he said quietly. She looked at him. In that corridor, you sat for 8 minutes. She almost smiled. You counted. I counted, he said. I have counted every minute since. The ceremony was to be held at the estate. Grandma Nkechi had once said, with the authority of someone who had earned an opinion, he should be celebrated properly. Properly does not have to be loudly. So the compound, mango trees lit with warm light strings, 100 people, no more. The night before, Amara sat on the veranda. Grandma Nkechi came with chai, 2 cups. She sat beside her. When I married, I was afraid. My husband was a complicated man. Complicated things surrounded him. She paused. But he was honest with me from the first day. He never made me smaller. He said to me once, I cannot change what I am for you, but you are the reason I want to be better than what I am. Amara absorbed that. Tobias said the same thing, she said quietly. Different words, but the same. Grandma Nkechi nodded. Both generations, the same truth. She looked at Amara. I knew you were right when you came through that gate. You weren't afraid. And you weren't pretending. You were assessing. She smiled. Only a practical woman can survive this house. After me, it is your turn. Amara's eyes filled. Grandma Nkechi didn't look at her. She was already looking at the night, straight ahead, smiling into it. Chisum came to the ceremony. No announce, no fuss. 3rd row. She sat with the particular attention of someone paying a debt they had acknowledged. When Amara walked out under the mango trees, the compound lit warm, the evening unhurried, Chisum's face did something it almost never did. It let something through. Not tears. Chisum was not there yet with tears. But something adjacent. Something that looked like the first honest thing her face had done in a very long time. Uncle Emeka sat beside her. No role, just invited. He watched his niece walk towards a man who had chosen her before any arrangement existed. He pressed his hands together on his knees. He said nothing, but his face said, "I see you." Late as it was, that was not nothing. Tobias's vows were short, written in the spare style of a man who says things once and means them entirely. He said, "I have been many things to many people. Some of those things I am not proud of. With you, I am only what I am, and what I am, for the first time, is enough." He paused. 3 words he hadn't rehearsed. "You reminded me of who I was before all of this, the boy who wanted to learn the land, who wanted to understand how things grow. You brought him back." Amara's vows were direct. She reached for the precise word, not the beautiful one. She said, "I came to you through a door I didn't choose. I found on the other side a man who had been keeping my name like a lantern for 3 years. I choose to stay beside him, not because I have no other option, but because he has earned it." A pause. "And because 8 minutes in a corridor in Abuja turned out to be the most important 8 minutes of my life." The mango trees were still. Grandma Nkechi exhaled. And the evening continued.
Chisam called on a Thursday. She had started something, an educational support fund for students redirected from scholarships they'd earned who needed someone to correct the error. "I can't untake what I took from you," she said. Her voice was different now, horizontal, the voice of someone who had stopped performing upward. "I know," Amara said, "but I can make sure it doesn't happen to someone else." A pause. "I want your name on the founding document, if you'll allow it." Amara looked out at the mango trees. She thought about the scholarship, the letter on the desk, the name rewritten. And then she thought, what if the story doesn't end with the loss? What if the loss is the first chapter? And this phone call, this fund, this voice that sounds like a reckoning, is a later chapter. "Yes," she said, "put my name on it." "Don't thank me," she said, "just do it right." Chisam said, "I will." And for the first time in a long time, Amara believed her. Uncle Emeka visited once more. He brought something this time, a photo album, her parents' wedding, young, laughing, looking toward a future they had built, and left it to her. "This is yours," he said. "It always was. I held on to it. I don't know why." Amara took it, held it. "Tell me about them," she said. "The things I don't know." He told her. For an hour, he told her everything she had never heard. Her mother staying up to check everyone's notebooks, the stranger's child she drove to hospital on a day she had somewhere else to be, and how her mother would look at Amara and say, "This is what I wanted to build." Amara did not stop the tears. Tobias came home mid-afternoon, read the room in 2 seconds, made tea for 3, sat down, said nothing. Just there. 3 people at a table, the right kind of silence. One Sunday morning, Amara awoke Tobias at 5 a.m. "I want to see the farm when sunrise happens." He got up. They were at the field's edge before the light came. First, dark blue, then purple, then orange. Then, in 1 second, the whole field went gold. Amara held her breath. "This happens every day?" she asked. "Yes." She looked at him. "The agronomy," she said. "When the timeline is done, the 3 to 5 years, I want you to do it properly. Research, a real project." He looked at her. "Your grandfather started with 1 borrowed tool. You've built far more than he did. Now build something for yourself." Tobias was quiet for a long time. "You always see," he said. "What?" "The things I hide." Amara shook her head. "I see the things you show when you think no one is watching." He extended his hand. Open, palm up. She took it. They sat in the old Jeep at the edge of the Ibadan fields. The gold moved across everything. There is a version of this story where Amara is the casualty, where the girl whose parents died, whose scholarship was stolen, whose uncle traded her future for a debt she didn't owe, where she is the warning, the cost, the one who got less. But that version requires you to stop the story too early. Stop it before a corridor in Abuja. Stop it before a man keeps a name for 3 years. Stop it before a library in Ibadan finds a woman who has nowhere else to be. Stop it before a house becomes a home, before a debt becomes a choice, before a choice becomes a life. Amara Osei was sent to settle a debt she never agreed to. She arrived with one bag and a life that had been taken from her. And what she found on the other side of that wrought-iron gate, the mango trees, the old stone house, the man with red earth on his boots who spoke to Hong Kong offices and checked soil with his bare hands, was not a punishment. It was a door. And on the other side of it, a man who had been keeping her name like a lantern for 3 years, waiting without knowing he was waiting for her to walk through. The girl sent to pay a stranger's debt did not end up diminished. She ended up chosen. She ended up known. And the man they called a simple farmer, it turned out, was one of the most quietly powerful forces in West African infrastructure, a man of enormous and complicated reach who decided long ago to point it all in one direction, and who gave the best of himself only to the woman who had once, for 8 minutes, sat beside a stranger because it was the right thing to do, not because she expected a reward, not because anyone was watching, just because. And just because, it turned out, was the only reason he had ever needed. Amara was sent as punishment and chosen before the arrangement existed. Would you have walked through that gate? Yes or no?